Virginia says, I am working on compassion practices and how polyvagal theory helps to support our own journey of self-compassion and compassion for others. Curious to know some stories of how you have noticed polyvagal theory strengthening capacities for compassion. And then how do I do that simply? I think for me, the biggest and most obviously noticeable way is when I'm working with, I do a lot of work with students. I do work with adults at nighttime. What I'm noticing now, actually, ever since I first learned about polyvagal theory, so from that point on to here, I would notice that with students who are more on the irritable, aggressive, angry side, that I used to have more nervousness in me. I thought I was doing something wrong. And now I just see them where they're at on their polyvagal ladder. So I see that as more of a fight energy or a sympathetic state. So being able to place them, at least in my mind conceptually, on a spectrum of possible behaviors, which the polyvagal ladder, that I think has helped me with a lot more patience. That really has helped me stay in my own safety state and roll with them. It's still not easy. It's still not easy, but I would say I have more compassion, more understanding for those students. Same thing with adults that I work with. I don't really get the same flavor of it. With teenagers, they're angry and they're kind of angry at everybody, and they're with therapy they can be really, I'll say, resistant, and that's fine. But with adults, they mostly are. Well, they're volunteering to be a part of therapy. They want help. They've seen my Instagram or podcast, and they're coming to me saying, "Hey, I think you can help me." So it's much more of it's easier. It's easier in a lot of ways, and the anger and the resistance toward me in particular, because when I work with students, I'm part of a staff, and they might see me as part of a system, and their parents might be pushing them to do it. So now I can see that as like that fight energy, and I think I'm better at rolling with it. And with adults, it's just not an issue. But when I guess with adults, when that aggressive energy does come up, and with kids, instead of thinking, "Oh my God, I'm doing something wrong," now it's like, "Oh, this is just the next step. This is the next step of coming up the ladder, maybe out of a shutdown state," and then that aggressive energy comes next, or they're coming into the room in a very aggressive place, and now I can just kind of know where it's at. Compassion for my own state, yeah, oh yeah. I think before all this stuff, that's a good question actually. So I think I've said before, I'm pretty open that I live in a pretty shut down place, or I have historically very much a shut down place. Not full on depression, not dissociative, but pretty darn shut down. And I wouldn't have placed that before polyvagal ladder. Before knowing the polyvagal ladder, I also wouldn't have diagnosed that or anything like that, and I still wouldn't. But knowing the polyvagal ladder, knowing how we can get stuck in states and whatnot, I think there's a lot more curiosity and compassion for myself. And when that sympathetic energy is within me, and that's something I'm still building my capacity to feel, I think I would say there's a lot more, I guess self-compassion is the word. I would say there's definitely curiosity there, and more of an inviting, like a welcoming. And I'm still pinpointing, like, how do I welcome this energy, more and more of it into my system? Because I know I have the capacity for more. But that shutdown stuff that I've lived with my whole life has a hard time with that. But I think that through that lens, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what's happening. That's it. And that definitely opens up more compassion. The critic tends to rule, absolutely. And for every single one of us, even us therapists, have the same thing. We have the same thoughts in our mind. You know what I mean? And yeah, so do I. I think it's just that new, like I say, it's that new paradigm. So here's just the new science. Oh, and by the way, I've been reading through the polyvagal theory book from Dr. Porges. It's my second attempt, and I'm getting a lot farther, and it's making more sense. Things are clicking, and so now I'm getting a better grasp on the science of it. So once you have the science of it or the basic understanding of it, and then you apply it to yourself, that can build a new narrative. Yeah, it's hard to once you have that, it's really kind of hard to be judgmental. I think, in my opinion, it's a lot harder to be judgmental toward the self or to others as well. I think.